September 13th, 2006. Seoul, South Korea. Jean-Louis Courjault returns from work around 7 in the evening. An engineer, 42 years old, he lives with his family in the prestigious Gangnam district. His wife, Véronique, has not yet returned. She teaches French at a language school and usually gets home by 8. Their 2 sons are staying with relatives tonight. Jean-Louis decides to make dinner, perhaps pasta or steak. He opens the freezer. It's a large 2-compartment model. On the top shelf are everyday items: chicken, beef, bagged vegetables. Below, in a corner, he notices a white plastic bag, tightly wrapped with clear packing tape. Jean-Louis doesn't remember seeing it before. He takes it out. It's heavy, about 2 kilograms. The shape is strange, not like food. He places it on the countertop. He smells a faint, unpleasant odor. He tears the tape, unwraps the edge of the plastic. Inside is the small shape of a hand. Tiny fingers. The skin is pinkish, frozen. He steps back from the table. He looks again. There's a form about 40 centimeters long. Its state was alarming. The eyes are closed. Jean-Louis stands silently for a minute, maybe 2.
Then he picks up the phone. His hands are shaking. He dials 112. Seoul Police, how may I help you? I've found something in the freezer. A form. Very small. Frozen. The operator takes down the address. A patrol car is dispatched immediately. 18 minutes later, there's a knock at the door. 3 police officers, 2 in uniform, 1 detective in plain clothes. They go into the kitchen. The detective puts on gloves and examines the contents of the bag. His face is impassive. He takes several photographs. When did you discover this? Half an hour ago. I opened the freezer and saw the bag. I hadn't noticed it before. Who lives in the apartment? Me, my wife Véronique, 2 sons. Where are they now? My wife will be back soon. The sons are at friends and grandma's. 1 patrol officer calls forensic specialists and a medical examiner. The second continues checking the freezer. Check all compartments, the detective says. The patrol officer opens the lower compartment. He takes out the packages one by one. Meat, fish, pre-made meals. Then another white bundle wrapped in tape. Exactly the same. The detective unwraps it.
Inside is the same thing. Another small, frozen form of the same size. Jean-Louis watches from the side. 2 discoveries in his freezer. How is this possible? Who put them there? Monsieur Courjault, do you know where these came from? No, I have no idea. When was the last time you opened the freezer? About 3 days ago. We rarely touch the lower compartment. My wife stores supplies there. Who has access to the apartment? Only my wife and I, no one else. Forensic specialists arrive half an hour later. They pack both discoveries into special containers. They take samples from the freezer. They photograph from various angles. Jean-Louis sits in the living room. The detective asks questions: how long they've lived in Korea, where they lived before, if there are family problems, if he's noticed anything strange in his wife's behavior. No, nothing. Véronique is an ordinary woman, a good mother. They've lived in Seoul for 7 years, having moved from France for work. At 8:30, the door opens. Véronique enters, sees the police officers. She stops. What happened? The detective stands up. Madame Courjault, 2 discoveries have been found in your freezer.
Your husband states he doesn't know where they came from. Please explain. Véronique turns pale. She sits down on a chair. Did you see these packages? A pause. Yes. Do you know what's in them? Yes. Jean-Louis turns sharply. Véronique, what are you saying? She covers her face with her hands. I couldn't. The detective reads her rights. Véronique is taken to the station. Jean-Louis is left alone. At the station, the interrogation begins. Véronique sits opposite the detective. A camera in the corner records. Tell us what was in the freezer. Silence for a minute. I gave birth to them. Both. The first one 3 years ago. The second 2 years ago. Did your husband know? No. I didn't even know myself until the last moment. Labor pains started. I was alone at home. I locked myself in the bathroom. Gave birth there. They showed no signs of life. I got scared. Wrapped them in a bag. Put them in the freezer. Twice. Yes. The second time was the same. The detective is silent, trying to understand how to not know about a pregnancy twice, how to simply hide the outcome in a freezer. The medical examiner will determine the circumstances.
We will find out if they were alive or not. If yes, that's another matter. Véronique nods. Tears flow silently. The investigation begins. The police have to find out why an exemplary mother of 2 sons gave birth and concealed it twice. What happened during the births? And most importantly, what the examination of the 2 small discoveries from the Courjault family's freezer will show. The apartment on the 8th floor looks like a typical home of a successful family. 3 bedrooms, a spacious living room, a modern kitchen. Family photos and frames adorn the walls. A smiling couple with 2 boys on the beach. The same 4 at a ski resort. A family picnic in the park. Police begin to gather information about the Courjault family. Jean-Louis works as an engineer for a large French company that is building the subway in Seoul. A good position, stable income. Véronique teaches French at a language school, 3 times a week from 10 to 3. Detectives interview the neighbors. An elderly Korean woman from the 5th floor says that the Courjault family is always friendly. They greet people. They smile.
A French couple from the 6th floor met them at a barbecue last month. Ordinary people, pleasant to talk to. No scandals, no noise from the apartment. Exemplary neighbors. Jean-Louis' colleagues give similar testimony. A reliable employee, a professional. Never complained of problems at home. Always calm, balanced. Sometimes showed photos of his sons. He was proud of them. At the language school where Véronique works, the director describes her as an excellent teacher. Punctual, responsible. Students love her. Colleagues speak highly of her. She took days off a few times, but always gave advance notice. No complaints. Family friends, another French couple living in Seoul, say they have known the Courjaults for about 5 years. They met at a French community gathering. Since then, they've met regularly. Dinners, walks with the children, joint trips. An ideal family, according to them. Véronique is a caring mother, always attentive to the boys. Jean-Louis is a good father, spends a lot of time with his sons. Detectives check medical records. Véronique saw a gynecologist twice, during her first and second pregnancies. Both were without complications.
Hospital births. Both normal. After the birth of her second son in 2000, she did not consult a doctor again. No records of depression. No visits to a psychologist. No prescriptions for antidepressants or tranquilizers. Police check finances. Accounts are in order. No large expenses, no debts. Stable middle class. Mortgage paid regularly. Small savings. Everything is clean. Detectives study the family's schedule for recent months. In July, the Courjaults went to France for 3 weeks to visit Véronique's parents in Burgundy. They returned in mid-August. In late August, Jean-Louis flew to France again for a week, a business trip to Paris. Véronique stayed in Seoul with her sons. Now it becomes clear why Jean-Louis was the one who discovered the findings in the freezer. Véronique was always home, always controlled the kitchen. She knew what was there. She avoided the lower freezer compartment, only taking food from the top. Jean-Louis rarely cooked himself. Usually his wife did.
But that day she was late from work. He decided to start dinner. He opened the freezer and found what had been hidden for years.
While Véronique is in custody, forensic experts conduct their examination. The results will come in a few days, but it is already clear that something went terribly wrong in this outwardly prosperous family. Behind a facade of normalcy lay a secret that even the husband did not know. September 14th, morning. Forensic experts return to the Courjault apartment for a detailed inspection. Véronique is in custody. Jean-Louis and his sons have moved in with friends. Specialists work methodically. The bathroom is the first place they check particularly thoroughly. It was there, according to Véronique, that everything happened, twice. They spray luminol. This substance glows under ultraviolet light upon contact with certain traces. Even if the surface has been cleaned, even if years have passed, luminol will reveal traces. The bathroom is absolutely clean, not a single glow. Tiles, grout between tiles, the bathtub drain, the floor, they check everywhere. Nothing. Either Véronique cleaned everything with surgical precision, or she lied about the location of the events. Forensic experts examined the bedrooms. Bedding, mattresses, carpets, luminol again. Still nothing.
The master bedroom is tidy. In the boys' room, toys are neatly arranged on shelves. An ordinary apartment of an ordinary family. They check the garbage chute, take samples from sewage pipes, inspect the balcony, look into the pantry. The result is the same. No biological traces. In the kitchen, they check all cabinets. They find ordinary items, dishes, pots, pans, food supplies, cleaning products under the sink, standard set, dish soap, scouring powder, bleach, nothing suspicious. The detective interrogates Jean-Louis again, asking if he noticed anything unusual in his wife's behavior in 2003 and 2004. It was then, according to Véronique, that everything happened. Jean-Louis strains his memory. 2003. Their sons were young. Véronique worked at the same language school. Everything was as usual. Maybe she complained about tiredness a couple of times. But who doesn't get tired with two active boys? The same. Ordinary life. Work. Children. Weekends in the park. No oddities. No changes in her figure, mood, or behavior. You lived together. Slept in the same bed. How could you not notice the pregnancy twice? I don't know. I really didn't notice anything.
Véronique didn't gain weight. Or I didn't pay attention. She always took care of herself, did yoga. Did she leave home for long periods? No. Only for work and ordinary errands. The store, the boys' school, sometimes meetings with friends. Did she take days off? A few times. She said she felt unwell, stayed home. I went to work, returned in the evening. She was already fine. The detective makes a note. These days off coincide with the dates Véronique mentioned. The medical expert conducts the examination. Both findings are of the same sex, both full term, of normal weight and size. Approximate age, newborns, not older than a few hours. The cause of what happened is difficult to determine due to prolonged freezing. Tissues are damaged by ice crystals, but there are no outward signs of harm. The expert cannot definitively say whether they breathed after birth or not. The lung air test is inconclusive after such storage. DNA analysis confirms both are from the same parents. Comparison with samples from Jean-Louis and Véronique shows a match. This is their offspring. Biologically, it's a fact. Now the investigation tries to understand the main point.
Véronique claims she didn't know about the pregnancies, that labor began suddenly, that both times the newborns showed no signs of life. But it's impossible to verify this. 3 and 2 years have passed. No witnesses, no medical records, only her words. If she is telling the truth, it's a tragedy, a rare psychological condition where a woman genuinely doesn't realize she is pregnant.
It happens. Medicine recognizes this. And if both newborns showed no signs of life from the start, formally there is no crime. There is only the question of concealment, but that's a different charge. If she is lying, that's a completely different matter. A double tragedy, intentional or negligent, a minimum of 10 years in prison. The investigation reaches a dead end. No physical evidence, no witnesses. Only Veronique's confession and the examination results, which prove nothing conclusively. The case entirely depends on whether the court believes her version of events, and to do that, they need to understand who Véronique Courjault really is. DNA results confirmed biological kinship.
Now the investigation focuses on something else, whether evidence can be found that Véronique was indeed pregnant in 2003 and 2004. If she is lying, it will show in the details. Detectives request all family photographs from those periods. Jean-Louis provides several albums. Pictures from vacations, family celebrations, the boys' birthdays. Experts examine each photo carefully. In March 2003 photos, Véronique is in jeans and a sweater. Her figure is slender, her stomach flat. April, she's in a summer dress at a picnic. Again, no signs. May, June, July, the same. According to Véronique, the first birth occurred in August 2003. But in the July photos, she looks absolutely normal, no rounded stomach. Detectives check photos from February to August. Véronique is in tight-fitting clothes or a swimsuit in all photos. Her figure is unchanged. In July, the family was at the seaside. She was in a bikini, flat stomach. And the birth, according to her, happened in September of the same year. The investigation interviews Véronique's friends. Frenchwoman Isabelle had been friends with her for all 7 years in Seoul. They met at least once a week.
They went to yoga together, drank coffee, walked with the children. Did you notice anything unusual in 2003 or 2004? No, absolutely nothing. Véronique was always in shape. We exercised together. She wore ordinary clothes, never complained of feeling unwell. Did she take breaks from yoga? A couple of times she said she was tired, but that's normal. She has 2 active boys. Colleagues from the language school give similar testimony. The director checks the attendance log. In August 2003, Véronique took 3 days off. In September 2004, 4 days. Both times she cited feeling unwell. But before and after that, she worked as usual. One colleague recalls that during those periods, Véronique came in looser clothing, long tunics, wide blouses. But it was summer. Many people dress that way in the heat. The investigation checks Seoul's medical facilities. Perhaps Véronique secretly sought medical help, but her name is not in any database for 2003-2004. No ultrasounds, no consultations, no tests. The detective conducts another interrogation. This time, Véronique is asked to describe in detail what exactly happened on those days. Tell us about the first time, August 2003.
Véronique sits quietly for a few seconds. I was home alone. The boys were at grandma's, my husband was at work. In the morning, I felt a strange pain in my lower abdomen. I thought I had food poisoning. The pain intensified. Then I realized these were contractions. I went to the bathroom, locked myself in. An hour later, it was all over. You didn't call an ambulance? No, I was in shock. I didn't understand what was happening. Only when it all happened, I saw the result. It was motionless, very small. I thought it was because I hadn't known about the pregnancy, that my body wasn't ready. What did you do next? I cleaned everything up, washed myself, wrapped it in plastic, put it in a bag, sealed it with tape, hid it in the freezer under the food. I didn't know what to do. I was afraid to tell my husband, afraid I would be accused of something. And the second time? September 2004? The same thing. Again, I didn't know I was pregnant. Again, contractions started suddenly. Again, I was alone at home. Everything repeated exactly the same way. I did the same thing, hid it in the freezer. I thought no one would ever know. The detective pauses. How could you not know about a pregnancy twice? You've given birth before. You know what it's like. I don't know. I had no signs. My stomach didn't grow. My periods continued. I didn't gain weight. I really didn't realize I was pregnant. The investigation consults with a psychiatrist. There is a phenomenon called denial of pregnancy. A woman psychologically blocks the awareness of her condition. The brain refuses to acknowledge the fact. The stomach remains flat, periods continue, weight does not change. It is rare, but it happens, described in medical literature. But twice in a row? The psychiatrist hesitates. Once, possibly. Twice, extremely unlikely. But it cannot be ruled out. Véronique's version cannot be confirmed or refuted. There is no physical evidence, no witnesses. There are only her words against biological facts. The investigation passes the case to the prosecutor. Now the court will decide. Following standard protocol, the investigation begins with the person who discovered the findings. Jean-Louis Courjault becomes the primary suspect. On September 15th, he is detained for an extended interrogation. The investigator's logic is simple. The man lives in the apartment, sleeps with his wife in the same bed, sees her every day. Not to notice a pregnancy twice is absurd. Therefore, he knew. Therefore, he is an accomplice, possibly even the main culprit. Detective Kim begins the interrogation sternly. Monsieur Courjault, your wife claimed she was pregnant twice without your knowledge. Did you truly not notice anything? I understand how it sounds, but I really didn't know. You slept with her in the same bed. How could you not notice changes in her body? Véronique always took care of herself, exercised. I didn't notice anything unusual. She didn't gain weight? No, or I didn't pay attention. Her behavior didn't change? Maybe she complained about tiredness a couple of times, but we have 2 boys. It's normal to be tired. Detective Kim flips through the testimony records. August 2003. Where were you during those days? At work. Véronique took a few days off, said she wasn't feeling well. You didn't insist she see a doctor? She said it was just tiredness. It passed after a couple of days. September 2004. The same? Yes, she took days off again. I was at work from morning to evening.
When I returned, she was already fine. You didn't check the freezer during those periods? No, I rarely take anything from there. Véronique handles the kitchen. The detective changes tactics. Monsieur Courjault, let's be honest. You knew your wife was pregnant. You didn't want more offspring. You helped her get rid of the problem. No, that's an absolute lie. Then explain how an adult man, living with a woman for 7 years, misses 2 pregnancies. I don't know. I don't understand how it's possible myself. Jean-Louis starts to get nervous. His hands shake. His voice cracks. He understands how absurd his words sound. The investigation checks his alibi. Colleagues confirm. In August 2003 and September 2004, Jean-Louis worked at the office. Arrived at 9 in the morning, left at 6 in the evening. No absences. No suspicious calls. They check phone records. On the days of the alleged events, Jean-Louis did not call his wife more often than usual, did not ask for time off work, behaved absolutely normally. Financial transactions are also clean. No large cash withdrawals, no strange purchases, no cash payments for medical services. Detective Kim consults with colleagues.
Jean-Louis' alibi is solid. He could not have physically been present during the events. His reaction upon discovering the findings appeared genuine. Neighbors heard his frightened voice when he called the police. The recording of the conversation with the operator confirms. The man was in shock. The investigation requests a psychological examination. Jean-Louis undergoes testing. The result, a normal psychotype with no signs of sociopathy or propensity for harsh actions. The lie detector shows when he says he didn't know about the pregnancies, he is telling the truth. But the main question remains. How could he not notice twice? The investigation consults with a gynecologist. The doctor explains, with denial of pregnancy, A woman's body may indeed not show classical signs. The stomach does not grow or grows minimally. Fat is distributed differently. The uterus is positioned so that changes are unnoticeable under clothing. If the man doesn't know what to look for, if the woman wears loose clothing, if their closeness is not very active, he might not realize. And the closeness of the Courjaults was indeed not very active.
Jean-Louis admits, after the birth of their second son in 2000, closeness became rare. Once a month, maybe less often. Both were tired from work and children. This is normal for couples with young children. By the end of the second week of the investigation, the prosecution's position changes. Jean-Louis truly knew nothing. His version is absurd, but it aligns with all the facts. He is not an accomplice. He is as much a victim of the situation as everyone else. He is released, warned not to leave Korea until the case is concluded. Jean-Louis returns to his friends, where he lives with his sons. Now all police attention is focused on Véronique. It is up to her to explain to the court what happened in their apartment in 2003 and 2004. Véronique has been in custody for 2 weeks. During this time, she has been interrogated 5 times. And with each interrogation, her version changes slightly. First interrogation, she confessed that she had given birth to both. Said she didn't know about the pregnancies, that they showed no signs of life immediately after birth. Second interrogation, she added details, spoke about the pain, about how she locked herself in the bathroom.
About panic and fear. Third interrogation, she changed one detail. Said that the first time it happened not in August, but in July 2003. Then remembered, no, it was August after all. Fourth interrogation, she confessed that the second time she suspected pregnancy a week before giving birth, but she didn't go to the doctor, hoped she was mistaken. Fifth interrogation, she changed her testimony again. Now she says that both times she definitely didn't know until the last moment. Detective Kim notes all the contradictions. This is a classic sign. When a person lies, their version changes. The truth is always one. Lies exist in many variations. The psychologist present during the interrogations notes another strangeness. Véronique talks about it absolutely calmly, without emotion, as if she's talking about a trip to the store. A normal mother, speaking of such events, should cry, break down, show stress. Véronique simply sits and answers in a monotonous voice. Madame Courjault, do you understand the seriousness of the situation? Yes. Do you realize what happened? Yes. Doesn't it seem strange to you that you didn't notice pregnancy twice? It seems incredible to me too.
But it's true. Or maybe you did notice? Maybe you knew from the very beginning? I don't know. Possibly. It's hard to remember what I felt then. The detective writes it down. Another change in testimony. The investigation orders a psychiatric evaluation. Véronique spends 2 days in a psychiatric clinic under observation. Doctors conduct tests, talk with her, analyze her behavior. The conclusion comes a week later. Véronique is mentally healthy. No signs of schizophrenia, no psychosis, no dissociative disorder. Above average IQ. Memory is normal. Fully aware of reality. But there is one peculiarity. Emotional detachment. An inability to express feelings about what happened. Psychiatrists describe this as a psychological defense mechanism. The brain blocks emotions so that the person can function. Detective Kim tries another approach. He invites Jean-Louis for a confrontation with his wife. They sit opposite each other. A table between them. Jean-Louis looks at Véronique. She lowers her eyes. Véronique, why didn't you tell me? Silence. I'm your husband. We've been together for 7 years. Why did you hide it? She raises her head.
What were you afraid of? I don't know. Everything. That you would judge me, that the police would arrest me, that they would take away our boys. Our boys? And those too? They're ours too? Véronique is silent. Jean-Louis continues. How could you? How could you live with this? Sleep next to me? Smile? Cook food? While they lay in the freezer? I didn't think about it. I blocked the memories. You blocked them? Every time you opened the freezer, you saw them. I only opened the top compartment, never looked in the bottom. The detective observes their reactions. Jean-Louis genuinely doesn't understand. Véronique is either telling the truth or she's a very good actress. The confrontation lasts an hour. Nothing new. Jean-Louis leaves dejected. Véronique remains calm. The investigation checks the latest theory. Perhaps Véronique is psychologically ill, but the doctors didn't see it. They consult with a professor of psychiatry from Seoul University. The professor studies the case materials, reads the interrogation protocols, watches camera recordings. His conclusion is unexpected.
Véronique exhibits signs of cryptic pregnancy, a state where a woman psychologically denies her pregnancy. This is not simulation. It's a real disorder. The brain truly does not register changes in the body. The stomach remains flat. Periods continue. Weight does not change. But the professor adds an important point. Even with cryptic pregnancy, a woman usually understands what is happening when labor begins. Contractions cannot be confused with anything else. And after childbirth, it is impossible not to understand what has occurred. Therefore, Véronique knew. At the moment of birth, she certainly understood the situation. And what she did next, hiding the outcome in the freezer, was a conscious choice. Twice, a year apart, in the same way. The investigation comes to a conclusion. Véronique is partially telling the truth. Perhaps she genuinely did not realize she was pregnant until labor. But after birth, she acted deliberately. She concealed evidence. She continued to live an ordinary life. She never once tried to rectify the situation. The prosecutor prepares the indictment. Concealment and a double tragedy. The case becomes public. Korean media publish the first reports.
A French family, a freezer, 2 discoveries. The story quickly becomes a sensation. Véronique's lawyer gives a press conference. He states that his client is innocent, that she is in shock, that the investigation is drawing conclusions based on insufficient evidence. The examination results cannot definitively establish whether the newborns were alive after birth. Journalists request an interview with Véronique. The lawyer allows one, to a local French publication in Seoul. The interview is published 3 weeks after the discovery. Véronique sits in the visiting room. No cameras, just a journalist with a voice recorder. She speaks in a calm, even voice, without tears, without trembling hands. I understand this looks terrible, but I truly didn't know I was pregnant. Both times it was a complete surprise to me. How can you not notice pregnancy twice? I can't explain it. I had no symptoms. My stomach didn't grow. I continued to exercise. My periods were normal. But after giving birth, you did realize what happened, didn't you? Yes, I was in a panic. I didn't know what to do. I was afraid to call an ambulance, afraid to tell my husband. Why did you put them in the freezer? I had no other choice. I couldn't think rationally. I just did the first thing that came to mind. Twice? A pause. Yes, I know how it sounds, but it's true. The interview is published. Public reaction is mixed. Some believe Véronique, saying, indeed, such things happen. Cryptic pregnancy is real. Others call her a monster. How can you live for years knowing what was in your freezer? The French community in Seoul is divided. Half of the Courjault family's acquaintances come to Véronique's defense. Isabelle, her friend, gives an interview. I've known Véronique for 7 years. She's a wonderful mother, caring, attentive. She would never deliberately cause harm. If she says she didn't know, I believe her.
The other half turns away. A neighbor from the 5th floor speaks to a Korean TV channel. Now that I recall, yes, she sometimes gained weight. In the summer of 2003, she wore wide blouses, but I thought it was just the heat. And in 2004, too. There were periods when she looked fuller, but who would have thought? A psychologist commenting on the case for the press notes the main strangeness.
Véronique acts neither like a guilty person nor an innocent one. Usually people either admit guilt and repent or fiercely deny it and demand justice. Véronique, however, is simply calm, as if discussing someone else's life. Family friends, the same French couple, recall details. In the summer of 2003, at a barbecue, Véronique refused wine, said she was taking antibiotics. No one paid attention. In 2004, on a joint trip to the sea, she didn't swim, said she had a cold. That also seemed normal. Now these small details form a picture. She avoided situations where her figure would be noticeable, didn't drink alcohol, wore loose clothing. Maybe she did know after all, or subconsciously felt it but didn't admit it to herself. The Korean press digs deeper. They find Véronique's old acquaintances in France, schoolmates, colleagues from work before the move, all describe her as reserved, discreet, never shared problems, always kept emotions to herself. A school friend recounts, in her youth, Véronique was very responsible, almost a perfectionist, afraid to make a mistake, afraid to disappoint her parents. Perhaps this character trait played a role.
When an unplanned pregnancy occurred, she simply couldn't accept it as a fact. Her brain shut down awareness of the problem. The investigation analyzes all interviews. The picture remains contradictory. On one hand, Véronique could genuinely have been unaware of the pregnancy. Medicine confirms this possibility. On the other, her behavior after birth was absolutely rational. She concealed evidence. She continued to live an ordinary life. Not once in 3 years did she break down, confess, or ask for help. The prosecutor insists on a full psychiatric evaluation, not outpatient, but inpatient, a minimum of 1 month under observation. It's necessary to understand if a person can simultaneously be unaware of a pregnancy and consciously conceal its consequences. The court grants the request. Véronique is transferred from the detention center to the psychiatric clinic at Seoul Hospital. The psychiatric clinic at Seoul Hospital, Véronique is placed in a private room under round-the-clock observation. The first 3 days involve standard psychological tests, conversations with doctors, behavior analysis. On the 4th day, a full medical examination is ordered.
Not just psychiatric, physical. The prosecutor insisted on this. Objective data on Véronique's physical condition must be obtained. Gynecologist Dr. Park conducts the examination. A nurse and a representative of the prosecution are present. Everything is recorded in a protocol. The examination lasts 40 minutes. Dr. Park makes detailed notes, takes tissue samples, photographs certain areas for medical documentation. The conclusion is ready the next day. Dr. Park hands the document to the prosecutor. He reads it carefully, then reads it again. The conclusion states, Véronique shows signs characteristic of a woman who has given birth at least twice after 2000. Stretches of certain tissues, changes that do not disappear over time, signs characteristic of natural childbirth. Moreover, Dr. Park finds old traces corresponding to births without medical assistance, minor signs that healed on their own without sutures. These are precisely what appear when a woman gives birth alone, without a midwife. The prosecutor summons Véronique for interrogation. He places the medical report in front of her. Madame Courjault, you claimed you didn't know about the pregnancies.
But your body says otherwise. You have physical signs of at least 4 births. 2 we know of, your sons, born in the hospital in 1998 and 2000, and 2 more, without medical assistance. Véronique looks at the document. She remains silent. This means you gave birth at home, alone, twice, exactly as you described. Medical science confirms your version of this part of the story. She raises her head. So you believe me? Partially. We believe that the births indeed occurred at home without assistance. But the question remains, what happened next? Were the newborns alive? Véronique is silent again. The prosecutor continues. He explains, the medical examiner cannot establish the exact cause of what happened due to prolonged freezing, but there are circumstantial signs. Remnants of lung tissue were found in both. This may indicate that they breathed, or it could be a result of natural processes in the womb during the final weeks. The investigation is at a dead end. Physical evidence confirms Véronique's version of home births, but they cannot prove what happened afterward, whether the newborns lived for a few minutes or were gone immediately.
If they were alive, it's a serious matter. A minimum of 10 years in prison. If they showed no signs of life from the start, only concealment, a maximum of 2 years suspended. Psychiatrists continue observation. A full report is ready in 2 weeks. Véronique is mentally healthy. No disorders. But a high degree of emotional suppression was identified in her, the ability to block traumatic memories. This explains how she could live an ordinary life for 3 years. One of the psychiatrists adds an important detail to the report. Véronique shows signs of dissociation, a psychological defense where the consciousness separates itself from a traumatic event. The person remembers the fact, but feels no emotional connection to it, as if it didn't happen to them. This explains her calmness. She is not an unfeeling monster. She is a person whose psyche protected itself in the only way available, by shutting down emotions. But this does not absolve her of responsibility. Even if Véronique truly didn't realize she was pregnant until birth, even if her psyche blocked memories, she still made decisions. The decision to hide the outcome in the freezer, the decision to tell no one.
The decision to continue living as if nothing happened. Twice. The prosecutor prepares the indictment. The main charge, a double tragedy. An alternative charge, if the court does not accept the main one, concealment and improper handling of the discoveries. The case is transferred to court. The trial is scheduled for December 2006. Véronique's lawyer changes the defense strategy. He invites an expert from France, Professor Richel Dubois, a specialist in perinatal psychiatry. Dubois has studied similar cases for 20 years. The professor arrives in Seoul in November 2006, conducts 3 meetings with Véronique, studies all case materials, then provides a conclusion for the court. He describes a phenomenon called déni de grossesse, denial of pregnancy. This is not a lie or simulation. It is a real psychological disorder in which a woman's brain completely blocks the awareness of her condition. The mechanism works like this. A person's psyche does not want to accept a certain fact, perhaps due to fear, perhaps due to social pressure, perhaps due to trauma. The brain begins to ignore all signals. Hormones work differently. The body adapts. The abdomen does not grow. Muscles are constantly tensed. The uterus is positioned atypically. Periods continue. Bleeding occurs from other sources. Weight does not change. Fat is distributed differently. Professor Dubois provides statistics. In France, about 3,000 cases of denial of pregnancy are registered each year. Of these, about 300 are complete denial until the moment of birth. The woman only learns she is pregnant when contractions begin. This is not rare. It's simply a little-known phenomenon. Most cases do not appear in criminal records because they end normally. The woman gives birth in a hospital or at home with the help of loved ones. The professor shows documents from other cases. Germany, 2003. A woman gave birth in a shopping center restroom. She didn't know she was pregnant. Canada, 2005. A teacher gave birth during class, also unaware. Spain, 2004. A student gave birth in a dormitory, found out about her pregnancy 10 minutes before birth. All these cases are proven by medical research. It's not a fabrication. The human brain is capable of amazing things when protecting the psyche from information it cannot accept.
The professor explains why Jean-Louis didn't notice anything. In cases of denial of pregnancy, a woman's body truly does not show classical signs. If the husband doesn't know what to look for, if their closeness isn't very active, if the wife wears loose clothing, he might not realize. This is not the husband's fault. It's a feature of the disorder. Dubois conducts tests with Véronique. The results match the clinical picture. She has a high level of anxiety that she carefully conceals, fear of not meeting expectations, perfectionism, an inability to accept unplanned events. There are risk factors in her biography: strict Catholic upbringing, a conservative family, the idea that a proper woman plans everything in advance. 2 sons were already there. The 3rd and 4th were unplanned. For Véronique's psyche, this was unacceptable. Her brain simply shut down awareness of the problem. But the professor adds a critically important point. Denial of pregnancy explains why she didn't know before birth, but it doesn't explain what happened afterward. After childbirth, a woman always understands the situation.
Contractions, pain, the appearance of a newborn, it's impossible not to realize. Therefore, at the moment of birth, Véronique certainly knew what was happening. And what she did next, wrapped it in a bag, placed it in the freezer, was a conscious decision. The disorder does not extend to this moment. The prosecutor uses this in his arguments. Fine, let her not have known about the pregnancy. Medicine confirms this. But after birth, she acted rationally. She cleaned up all traces, hid the evidence, continued to live as usual. Not once in 3 years did she try to rectify the situation or seek help. The defense counters. Véronique's psyche was in a state of shock. She gave birth alone, without help in the bathroom. The newborns showed no signs of life. She was scared, didn't know what to do, acted irrationally. But twice? The prosecutor insists the first time can be attributed to shock. But the second time, a year later, she already knew she could give birth without realizing she was pregnant. She should have been prepared, should have consulted a doctor at the slightest suspicion. Instead, the story repeated itself exactly. Professor Dubois explains, with denial of pregnancy, a person does not learn from experience. The psyche blocks even memories of the first case. Véronique could have subconsciously forgotten that it had already happened. Her brain protected her from trauma by erasing the memory. The court faces a difficult choice. Medicine explains how it was possible. Psychiatry explains the mechanism of the disorder. But the main question remains: is Véronique guilty of what happened after the births? This is what needs to be determined now. While psychiatrists study Véronique, the investigation does not leave Jean-Louis alone. Officially, he is a witness, but Detective Kim does not entirely believe in his innocence. October 2006. Jean-Louis is called in for another interrogation, his 5th to date. The detective asks the same questions, but from a different angle. Monsieur Courjault, let's try this again. Your wife is pregnant. Her stomach is growing. You sleep with her in the same bed. How could you not notice? I've already explained. I didn't notice any changes. Perhaps they were minimal. Or you noticed, but pretended not to. No, I really didn't know. Your closeness, how often?
Jean-Louis blushes. Rarely. Once a month, maybe less. We were both tired from work and the children. Convenient. Rare closeness. Fewer chances to notice changes in your wife's body. It wasn't intentional. That's just how it happened. The detective changes the subject. August 2003. Véronique takes 3 days off. You didn't call her even once during the day? I called, once or twice. She said she was lying down, resting. You didn't insist she see a doctor? She said she was just tired. It passed after a couple of days. September 2004. The same. You again didn't insist on a doctor. I trusted her. I thought she knew herself when a doctor was needed. The investigation checks his phone records in detail. All calls between the spouses in August 2003 and September 2004 are absolutely normal. Short conversations. How are you? Fine, resting. Okay, see you tonight. Nothing suspicious. The detective studies Jean-Louis' work schedule. The company has a strict attendance system.
Electronic passes record every entry and exit. On the days of the alleged births, Jean-Louis was in the office from 9 in the morning until 6 in the evening. No absences.
He spent his lunch break in the office cafeteria. There are camera recordings. Physically, he could not have been present. The office is a 40-minute drive from home. Even if he had slipped out for an hour, the system would have recorded it. The investigation orders a polygraph test. Jean-Louis agrees. The expert asks control questions, then moves to the main ones. Did you know your wife was pregnant in 2003? No. The polygraph shows truth. Did you know she was pregnant in 2004? No. Again, truth. Did you help your wife conceal the outcomes of the births? No. Truth. Did you ever open the lower freezer compartment before September 13th, 2006? No. Or very rarely. I don't remember exactly. A slight fluctuation, but within normal limits. The expert provides a conclusion. Jean-Louis answers sincerely. No signs of deception were found. Detective Kim doesn't give up. He checks the finances more deeply. Perhaps Jean-Louis paid someone for silence, or bought something suspicious. Bank statements for 2003-2006 are absolutely clean. Salary, utility bills, grocery stores, gas stations, boys' school. No large cash withdrawals, no strange transfers. The investigation interviews Jean-Louis' colleagues again. Everyone says the same thing. He was completely absorbed in work. The subway project was in a critical phase. Regular overtime, meetings late into the evening, business trips to other cities in Korea. He simply had no time to keep track of household matters. One colleague recalls, in 2004, Jean-Louis complained that his wife had become more withdrawn, talked less. He thought it was tiredness from the children. The colleague advised him to help more around the house. Jean-Louis agreed, but work prevented it. This doesn't resemble the behavior of an accomplice. This resembles the behavior of a husband who genuinely knew nothing. Detective Kim consults with the prosecutor. The prosecutor examines all materials. The alibi is solid. The polygraph was passed. Finances are clean. Colleagues confirm his busy schedule. The psychologist confirms genuine shock upon discovery. The prosecutor makes a decision. All suspicions against Jean-Louis are dropped. He is no longer involved in the case as a potential accomplice, only as a witness and a victim. Jean-Louis receives notification. He is free. He can return to a normal life.
But what kind of normal life can there be after this? His wife is under investigation. His family is destroyed. His sons live with their grandmother, asking questions he cannot answer. The French community in Seoul is divided in its attitude towards him. Some sympathize, a poor man, a victim of the situation himself. Others whisper, how could he not have noticed twice? He must be hiding something. Jean-Louis stops leaving the house, takes time off work, doesn't answer calls from friends. He just sits in the rented apartment, trying to understand how his life turned into this nightmare. Meanwhile, Véronique prepares for court. She is now the sole accused. Only she will have to explain to the judges and jury what happened in their apartment in 2003 and 2004. The case is scheduled for December. 1 month remains. November 2006. Véronique has been in the psychiatric clinic for a month. Her lawyer is preparing the defense strategy for the court. The main argument, denial of pregnancy, psychological disorder, lack of intent. But during another conversation with the psychiatrist, Véronique says something unexpected. The doctor immediately notifies the investigation.
An emergency interrogation is scheduled. Detective Kim arrives at the clinic, turns on the voice recorder. Véronique sits opposite, hands folded at her lap. Madame Courjault, did you wish to add something to your testimony? A pause. 10 seconds of silence. It wasn't twice. The detective freezes. What do you mean? The first time didn't happen in Korea. It was in France. In 1996. Explain in more detail. Véronique begins to recount, her voice monotonous, without emotion. as if reading a report. She and Jean-Louis have been married for 2 years. They live in a suburb of Lyon. Jean-Louis works as an engineer, Véronique a French teacher at a school. They are planning their first child, but are delaying for now. They want to save money. That summer, Véronique feels unwell. Morning sickness, tiredness. She thinks it's stress from work. Doesn't pay attention. Her periods are irregular, but they always have been. In October, contractions begin. She's home alone. Jean-Louis is on a 3-day business trip to Paris. Véronique locks herself in the bathroom. A few hours later, it's all over. What happened next? The outcome showed no signs of life. I didn't know what to do.
Panicked. Jean-Louis was supposed to return the next day. I couldn't leave it in the bathroom. And what did you do? We had a fireplace in the living room, wood burning. I put everything in there, started a fire, waited several hours until the process was complete. The detective writes down every word. This changes everything. Not 2 cases, but 3. The first in France, then 2 in Korea. Did you tell your husband? No. When he returned, I said I had the flu. He didn't notice anything. Why didn't you see a doctor? I was scared. Didn't know how to explain. Thought I would be accused of something terrible. You didn't realize you were pregnant? No. Until the contractions, I had no idea. The investigation immediately contacts the French police. They send a request to check the house in Lyon where the Courjaults lived in 1996. But 10 years have passed. The house was sold to another family. The fireplace had been used hundreds of times. No traces can be found. The detective continues the interrogation. After the first incident, you didn't seek a psychologist, didn't try to understand what happened. I blocked the memories, tried not to think about it.
6 months later, we planned our first child. I became pregnant. Everything went normally. Gave birth in a hospital. Then our second son in 2000. Also normal. And then in 2003 and 2004, the story repeated itself. Yes, I didn't connect it to that first time. I didn't really remember. My psyche blocked it. The psychiatrist present at the interrogation makes notes. This aligns with the clinical picture of dissociation. The brain erases traumatic memories so that a person can function. But the pattern repeats itself again and again. The prosecutor receives new testimony. Now the accusation becomes more serious. Not 2 cases, but 3. A systematic nature. The first time in 1996 in France, and she concealed the evidence. The second and third in Korea, she hid them in the freezer. This no longer looks like isolated panic. It looks like a recurring pattern of behavior. A woman gives birth, conceals the outcome, continues to live an ordinary life. Twice through one method, once through another. 3 different ways to hide the same thing. Véronique's lawyer is in shock. This confession destroys the entire defense strategy.
Now it's difficult to convince the court that it was panic and misunderstanding. 3 times in 10 years? That's already a system. He tries to minimize the damage, insists that all 3 cases were the result of one disorder, denial of pregnancy, that Véronique truly did not realize her condition each time, that after birth she acted in a state of shock and dissociation. But the prosecutor sees it differently. After the first time in 1996, Véronique should have understood that something was wrong with her, should have seen a doctor, should have taken steps to prevent it from happening again. Instead, she simply forgot and allowed the story to repeat itself twice more. This looks either like extreme irresponsibility or like conscious avoidance of the problem. In any case, it's guilt. French police check Véronique's medical records for 1996. No doctor visits in October or November. No health complaints. She continued to work at the school as usual. Colleagues don't remember anything strange. A normal school year. The investigation interviews Véronique's parents. They live in Burgundy, a small town, an elderly couple,
conservative Catholics.
Father is retired. Mother is a homemaker. They are in shock at the news. They don't believe their daughter could do such a thing. She was always obedient, responsible, proper. In 1996, they saw her several times, noticed no signs of pregnancy. She looked normal. The mother recalls one detail. In the autumn of 1996, Véronique called, saying she felt unwell. Her mother offered to come and help. Véronique refused, saying she could manage herself. They didn't revisit the topic. The case takes on a new scale. 3 incidents in 10 years across 2 countries. The investigation understands this is not an isolated crime committed in a fit of passion. They are facing systematic concealment, repeated 3 times with the same pattern. The trial will begin in 3 weeks. Now Véronique will have to explain not 2 incidents, but 3. December 2006. A week before the trial, Detective Kim conducts the final interrogation. This is the last chance to get a complete picture of the events. Véronique agreed to give detailed testimony. The interrogation room, a table, 2 cameras, a voice recorder. The detective opens a folder with the case materials.
Madame Courjault, let's start from the beginning. Tell me about the first incident. October 1996, Lyon. Véronique sits upright, hands on the table. Her voice is calm. Labor started in the morning. Jean-Louis was on a business trip. I went to the bathroom. Everything was over in about 3 hours. What did you see? It was small, about 40 centimeters. It was without movement. It was making no sounds. The detective notes, she says it, the small one. She doesn't use other words. Did you check for a pulse? No. I didn't know how. I just watched. It wasn't breathing. What did you do next? I wrapped it in a towel, brought it into the living room, put it in the fireplace, started a fire, waited several hours. Did you understand what you were doing? A pause. I understood that I needed to get rid of it. Jean-Louis was supposed to return the next day. I couldn't leave it. Why didn't you call the police or an ambulance? I was scared. I thought they would accuse me, that they would say I was a bad mother, that I should have known about the pregnancy. The detective makes a note, moves on to the next incident. August 2003, Seoul. Tell me. The same thing.
Labor started. I was alone at home. I locked myself in the bathroom. It was over in a couple of hours. And the result? Again, the small one. It was without movement. It wasn't breathing. I wrapped it in plastic, taped it shut, put it in the freezer under the food. Why in the freezer and not in the fireplace? We didn't have a fireplace in the apartment. I didn't know where else to put it. The freezer seemed like a safe place. Didn't you think your husband might find it? I did, but I hoped he would never look in the bottom compartment. I always took the food out from there myself. September 2004, the 3rd incident. Everything repeated itself. Labor, the bathroom, the same result. I did the same thing. Wrapped it, put it in the freezer. The detective looks at her for a long time. Madame Courjault, after the first time, didn't you consider seeing a doctor, getting an examination? I blocked out the memories. I tried not to think about it. After the second time, the same thing. Do you understand that 3 times is no longer a coincidence? It's a pattern. Véronique remains silent. The detective changes tactics. Let's be honest. You knew about the pregnancy, didn't you? You felt changes in your body.
Maybe. I don't know. It's hard to remember now.
Did you want to get rid of them? No, I didn't plan it. But after giving birth, you acted deliberately. You used one method for the first. You used another for the second and third. These were conscious actions. Véronique lowers her head. I was in a panic. I didn't know what to do. I just did what came to mind. The same panic 3 times. Silence. The detective opens the medical report. Both of the ones from the freezer showed signs that they may have breathed. This means they were alive after birth. Véronique abruptly raises her head. No, they weren't moving. They weren't crying. I truly thought that they had no life. Yes, but you didn't check. You didn't call a doctor. You didn't try to help. I didn't know how. You are a teacher, an educated woman. You have 2 healthy sons. You know what newborns look like. You should have understood. Véronique covers her face with her hands. For the first time during the entire interrogation, she shows emotion. I didn't perceive them as real. They weren't like my boys.
They were different, small, strange. I didn't feel a connection. The detective writes down this phrase with particular care. This is a key admission. She didn't perceive them as people. To her, they were just objects, problems to be solved. Do you regret what happened? A long pause, almost a minute of silence. I don't know. I feel emptiness. I can't explain it. The psychiatrist observing through the glass makes a note. Emotional detachment, inability to express regret, classic signs of deep dissociation. The interrogation lasts 4 hours. By the end, Véronique has given a full confession. 3 incidents, 1996, 2003, 2004. 1 in France, 2 in Korea. All 3 ended the same way, with concealment. The detective hands the protocol to the prosecutor. This is the main document of the prosecution, a full confession from the accused's own mouth, recorded on camera, audio recorded, and personally signed by her. Now only the trial remains. The jury will have to decide, is Véronique guilty of deliberate actions, or is she a victim of a psychological disorder? Her fate depends on this decision, either 10 years in prison or a suspended sentence with compulsory treatment.
Prosecutor Lee studies the case materials. Before him lie interrogation transcripts, medical reports, psychiatric evaluations. The defense is building a case that Véronique was insane due to a disorder. His task is to prove otherwise. He lays out the chronology of Véronique's actions after each incident. He notes every step. 1996, France. After giving birth, she did not call for help. Instead, she waited until everything was over. She wrapped the result in a towel, brought it into the living room, started a fire in the fireplace, waited several hours until the process was complete, cleaned the fireplace, washed herself, tidied herself up. When her husband returned the next day, she acted completely normally. 2003, Seoul. Again, she did not call for help. She wrapped it in plastic, carefully taped it shut, hid it in the freezer under the food, cleaned the bathroom. She was on sick leave for 3 days, recovering after childbirth. Then she returned to work. She told no one. She continued to open the freezer daily, taking food from the top, avoiding the bottom compartment. 2004, Seoul. Exactly the same thing. Plastic, tape, freezer. She cleaned up the traces. A few days of rest.
Return to normal life. 2 more years of living with this knowledge. The prosecutor sees a pattern. Each time Véronique acted methodically. She did not fall into hysterics. She did not call for help. She did not confess. She consistently hid the traces. This is the behavior of someone who understands they are doing something wrong. He calls an expert psychiatrist for a consultation. Doctor, tell me, can a person with pregnancy denial so purposefully conceal the consequences? The psychiatrist nods. Pregnancy denial affects the awareness of carrying a child, but after childbirth, a woman always understands what has happened. The disorder does not continue after the newborn's appearance.
So when Veronique wrapped them in bags and hid them, she was acting consciously. Absolutely. She understood the situation. She understood that her actions needed to be concealed. This proves sanity. And the emotional detachment, the inability to express regret, that's a psychological defense mechanism, disassociation, but it doesn't make a person insane. She knew the difference between right and wrong. She just blocked her emotions to cope. The prosecutor makes a note.
This is a key argument. Veronique might not have been aware of the pregnancy. That's proven by medicine. But after childbirth, she acted rationally. She planned. She concealed. This is a sign of sanity. He analyzes her behavior more deeply. Veronique continued to work, socialize with friends, take care of her 2 sons, cook dinners, smile in photographs, live a full life. All these years she functioned absolutely normally. If she had been insane, she wouldn't have been able to maintain such a facade. Insane people lose the ability to function socially. Veronique, however, was an exemplary mother, wife, and teacher. The prosecutor prepares the final document for the court. The main thesis is conscious actions. Veronique understood that her actions were illegal. Evidence, systematic concealment. She used different methods to conceal evidence 3 times. Absence of attempts to seek help. She never contacted a doctor or the police. Maintenance of social functioning. She continued to work and care for her family. Prolonged silence. She lived with this knowledge for 3 years, confessing to no one. All of this indicates that she understood the unlawfulness of her actions.
She understood the need to conceal them. She acted purposefully and methodically. Pregnancy denial explains why she didn't know before childbirth, but it doesn't explain or justify her actions afterward. At the moment she wrapped the result in plastic, when she taped it, when she hid it in the freezer, she was completely sane. She made a choice, a conscious choice to conceal what happened instead of seeking help. The prosecutor hands the document to his assistants. The prosecution strategy is ready. They will not dispute the psychological disorder. Medicine is on the defense's side. But they will prove that the disorder does not exempt her from responsibility. Veronique knew what she was doing. She knew it was wrong, and she consciously chose the path of concealment 3 times. The trial will begin in 3 days. The jury will have to decide whether the psychological disorder is sufficient for acquittal, or if her actions after childbirth were too conscious to avoid punishment. When the news of Veronique's full confession became public, everyone waited for Jean-Louis's reaction. He had been silent for a month. He gave no interviews. He didn't appear in public.
He was hiding in a rented apartment with his sons. On December 15th, 2006, 5 days before the trial, he gave his only statement to the press, a short one, read in front of cameras near his home. I learned about my wife's actions 3 months ago. It destroyed my life. But I studied the medical reports. I spoke with psychiatrists. I understand now. Veronique is ill. She has a serious psychological disorder. She is not a cold-blooded criminal. She is a person who needs treatment. I will support her, for the sake of our sons, for the memory of who she was before this. Journalists bombard him with questions. He doesn't answer. He goes back into the house. Public reaction is immediate. French and Korean media explode with discussions. How can he support her? How can he forgive such a thing? Talk shows on French television dedicate entire episodes to this statement. Psychologists explain this is a normal reaction of a spouse to trauma, denial, an attempt to find a rational explanation. Jean-Louis cannot accept that he lived 7 years with a person capable of such a thing. It's easier to believe in illness. Feminist organizations stand up in Veronique's defense.
They say this is the result of societal pressure on women. The expectation to be an ideal mother, wife, and professional all at once. The psyche cannot withstand it. A breakdown occurs.
Conservative groups demand maximum punishment. They say no illness justifies 3 incidents in 10 years. After the first time, she should have sought help. Instead, she allowed the story to repeat itself twice. The case hits the front pages of newspapers worldwide. The freezer case in Seoul. French teacher confesses to 3 incidents. The phenomenon of pregnancy denial, illness, or justification. The French community in Seoul is definitively split. Half stop communicating with Jean-Louis. They consider him an accomplice, or at least incredibly naive. The other half sympathizes. A poor man, a victim himself. Isabelle, Véronique's friend, gives an interview to a French magazine. She cries on camera. "I can't believe it. I knew her for 7 years. We were close friends. She seemed absolutely normal, caring, kind. How could I not have noticed? How did no one notice?" Véronique's parents declined to comment.
Their lawyer issues a brief statement. The family is going through an extremely difficult period and asks for their right to privacy to be respected. Véronique's sons do not yet know the details. Jean-Louis told them that their mother was ill in the hospital. She would soon recover and return. A child psychologist is working with them, preparing them for potential consequences. When they grow up, they will have to learn the truth, but not now. Véronique's lawyer uses her husband's public support to his advantage. He tells the press, if the person closest to her, who lived with her for 7 years, believes in her illness, why can't society believe it? Jean-Louis saw her from the inside. He knew her best, and he says it's a disorder, not malice. The prosecutor counters in his statement. The husband's emotional stance is understandable, but it has no legal significance. The court will evaluate facts, not feelings. The facts speak of conscious actions after childbirth, systematic concealment, absence of attempts to seek help. On December 19th, the day before the trial, Véronique is transferred from the psychiatric clinic to the courthouse. Cameras film her as she exits the car.
Thin, pale, in a gray suit. Her hair is tied back, her face emotionless. She looks straight ahead, not reacting to the journalist's shouts. A jury of 12 people will gather in the courtroom. 6 men, 6 women. They will decide Véronique Courjault's fate. Is she guilty of premeditated actions, or was she insane due to a psychological disorder? Her sentence depends on their decision, either 10 years in prison for each incident or a suspended sentence with compulsory treatment in a psychiatric clinic. The trial begins tomorrow, December 18. 2 days before the trial, the investigation conducts a final procedure, a reconstruction of events. The prosecutor needs to prove to the jury that everything Véronique described was physically possible, that she could indeed have done it unnoticed in an apartment where her husband lived. Véronique is brought to their former apartment on the 8th floor. Jean-Louis had long since moved out. The apartment is empty. Detective Kim, the prosecutor, the defense lawyer, a forensic expert, and a cameraman are present. Everything will be recorded. Véronique enters the apartment calmly. She looks around. This was her home for the past 7 years.
Here she raised her sons. Here those events took place. Madame Courjault, show us how everything happened in August 2003, says the detective. Véronique goes into the bathroom. The room is small, 3 by 2 meters. A bathtub, a sink, a toilet, a cabinet with towels. I felt pain in the morning. I understood it was labor. Jean-Louis left for work at 9. The boys were at school. I locked the door. She points to the lock, a simple latch from the inside. I sat here, on the edge of the bathtub. The pain intensified. Pushing started in about 2 hours. The forensic expert records every detail. The lawyer observes silently. What happened next? Everything ended quickly, about 15 minutes. The outcome occurred in the bathtub. I saw that it was small. It wasn't moving. Show the subsequent actions using the mannequin.
The forensic expert takes out a special dummy the size of a newborn. He hands it to Véronique. She takes it without hesitation, puts it in the bathtub, shows how she wrapped it in a towel, how she carried it to the kitchen. They move to the kitchen. Véronique opens the freezer compartment. She points to the bottom section.
I took a plastic bag from here. She indicates a drawer under the sink. Wrapped it, taped it shut with tape from the same drawer, put it here, in the very corner, covered it with bags of meat on top. The detective checks. Indeed, the corner of the freezer is completely hidden from view if one doesn't look specifically. If you only take food from the top, you could go years without noticing what's underneath. How long did the whole procedure take? About 20 minutes. Then I went back to the bathroom, cleaned everything up, washed myself, went to bed. Jean-Louis returned at 6 in the evening. I said I wasn't feeling well. He didn't ask questions. The prosecutor makes notes. Physically, everything is possible. Her husband was not home for 8 hours. In that time, everything could be done and the traces removed. And September 2004? Exactly the same way. Everything repeated itself. The same actions, the same result. Véronique says this with absolute calm, as if describing a dinner recipe. No emotions, no tremor in her voice. The lawyer tries to soften the impression. Madame Courjault, what did you feel in those moments? Nothing. Emptiness.
I just did what seemed necessary. Did you understand that you were acting wrongly? I don't think so. I was in a state of shock. I wasn't analyzing my actions. The prosecutor objects. But you knew you had to hide it. That shows awareness. I just wanted it to disappear, for the problem to go away. The reconstruction lasts an hour and a half. Véronique demonstrates every step, where she stood, how she held it, where she put it, how she closed the freezer, how she cleaned the bathroom. The forensic expert checks the time intervals. From the start of labor to the moment of concealment, approximately 3 hours passed. In that time, everything could be done alone. Neighbors heard nothing. The bathroom had good sound insulation. Véronique did not scream during labor. The detective asks one last question. In 3 years, did you never once think of confessing? I did, but I didn't know how. I was afraid of losing my family. I was afraid they would take my boys away. So you understood the seriousness of the situation. A pause. Perhaps. It's hard to say now what I understood then. The cameraman turns off the camera. The experiment's materials will be shown in court.
The jury will see Véronique calmly, methodically, and unemotionally demonstrating her actions. This could work against her. Such behavior doesn't resemble someone in a state of shock. It resembles someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Or the defense could use it as evidence of deep dissociation, so deep that even now, 3 years later, she cannot connect with her emotions. The trial begins tomorrow. The reconstruction has become the last piece of evidence in Véronique Courjault's case. December 20, 2006, Seoul District Court. The hall is full. Journalists, representatives from the French embassy, psychologists, mere onlookers. Everyone wants to see the end of this story. Véronique enters the hall. Gray suit, hair tied back, pale face. She sits next to her lawyer. She doesn't look at the public. Her gaze is fixed on the floor. The judge opens the session. He reads the indictment. 3 episodes of unlawful actions, 1996 in France, 2003 and 2004 in Korea. Concealment of birth outcomes. The prosecutor demands the maximum sentence, 10 years for each incident. The prosecution speaks first. Prosecutor Lee methodically presents the evidence.
DNA analysis confirms biological kinship. Medical examination shows signs of unassisted birth. Interrogation records contain a full confession. The reconstruction proves physical possibility. He particularly emphasizes the systematic nature, not once in a panic, 3 times in 10 years. The same pattern of actions: concealment, continuation of normal life, silence. This shows awareness. The defense speaks next. The lawyer calls Professor Dubois. The psychiatrist explains the phenomenon of pregnancy denial, cites statistics, shows examples of other cases. This is a real disorder, recognized by medicine. Then a second psychiatrist is called, from Seoul University. He confirms the diagnosis. Véronique has deep dissociation, emotional blockage, an inability to perceive what happened as reality. This is not a simulation. It's a psychological defense mechanism. The lawyer insists Véronique is not a criminal. She is a sick person. She needs treatment, not prison. The court hears witnesses. Jean-Louis comes to the stand. He speaks softly, struggling to find his words. I lived with Véronique for 10 years. She was a good wife, a caring mother to our sons.
I didn't know about her disorder. Now I understand. She needs help. I will support her. Our boys need their mother. The prosecutor asks him a question. Monsieur Courjault, don't you believe your wife should bear responsibility? I do, but it must be responsibility taking into account her condition. She was not herself. Isabel, her friend, is heard. School colleagues, neighbors. Everyone says the same thing. No one noticed anything. Véronique seemed absolutely normal. On the third day of the trial, Véronique is given the final word. She stands up. For the first time, she looks straight ahead, at the judge, at the jury. I realize that I did something terrible. I cannot explain how it happened. I cannot justify my actions. I was ill, but that does not absolve me of guilt. I ask for forgiveness from my family, from society. I am ready to bear the punishment. Her voice is steady, without tears, but something new appears in it, awareness, as if a fog is clearing. The jury retires for deliberation. 5 hours pass. The hall waits in tension. In the evening, the jury returns. The foreman reads the verdict.
On the charge of unlawful actions concerning 3 newborns. Guilty. The hall falls silent. The jury took into account the presence of a psychological disorder. Took into account the absence of premeditation. Took into account the confession and remorse. We recommend a mitigation of the sentence.
The story of the Courjault family will become one of the most famous cases of pregnancy denial in criminal practice. January 2007. Véronique begins serving her sentence at Changju Women's Prison, 100 kilometers from Seoul. A special regime with the possibility of psychiatric treatment, twice weekly sessions with a psychologist, weekly psychiatric evaluation. Jean-Louis remains in Korea for another 6 months. He completes his work contract. The sons go to school. He doesn't tell them the truth, only that their mother is ill, in the hospital. When the elder asks why they can't visit her, Jean-Louis replies, "The doctors don't allow it. Her condition is too serious." In the summer of 2007, he receives a new offer to return to France, a transfer to the company's Paris office. He accepts. He packs his belongings. He sells the apartment in Seoul, the same apartment on the 8th floor. The new owners do not know its history. Before leaving, Jean-Louis visits Véronique in prison once. The visit lasts 30 minutes. They sit on opposite sides of a glass partition. They speak through a telephone receiver. "I'm taking the boys to France." "That's right."
They need stability. Will you write to them? I don't know. I'm not sure it's right. They are your sons. I know. But maybe it's better if they forget. This is the last time they speak as husband and wife. A month later, Jean-Louis' lawyers file for divorce. Véronique does not object. The process takes place in absentia. By the end of 2007, the marriage is officially dissolved. In prison, Véronique behaves exemplarily. She works in the library, participates in all psychotherapy programs. Psychiatrists note progress. She begins to connect with emotions, cries during sessions, speaks of regret. Slowly, but her psyche is recovering. In 2014, having served 7 of her 8 years, Véronique is released early for good behavior. She is 48 years old. Korean authorities deport her to France. A mandatory condition, she can no longer enter Korea. She returns to Burgundy, to her parents, lives under her maiden name, changes her appearance, short haircut, glasses, finds a job in a small library. No one knows her past. Her sons refuse to communicate with her. The elder is 16, the younger 14. Jean-Louis told them the truth when they were old enough.
Their reaction was expected. Shock, denial, anger. They don't want to see their mother. They don't reply to letters. For them, she ceased to exist. Jean-Louis remarries in 2016. His new wife is a colleague, French. The sons accept her well. The family lives in a suburb of Paris. A normal life. The past is not discussed. The Courjault case enters textbooks. Criminalists study it as an example of a complex investigation. Psychiatrists use it as a classic case of pregnancy denial. Lawyers debate the boundaries of sanity in mental disorders. In 2010, a French documentary channel makes a film about this case. Without the family's participation, all interviews are with experts and journalists. The film sparks a new wave of discussions. Feminists speak of societal pressure on women. Conservatives demand stricter laws. Psychologists call for greater attention to mental health. In 2018, a similar case occurs in Germany. A woman hides 3 pregnancies, gives birth at home, and conceals the results. Lawyers use the Courjault case as a precedent. The court delivers a similar verdict: 8 years with treatment. The phenomenon of pregnancy denial becomes more widely known.
Doctors begin to pay attention to the signs. Psychologists develop assistance programs. Legislators discuss changes in criminal codes. The story of the Courjault family shows the main thing. Anything can be hidden behind a facade of normality. An ideal family in photographs, a successful career, loving parents, and yet a deep psychological disorder that even the closest person is unaware of. Véronique Courjault now lives somewhere in France. She is 60 years old. She continues regular sessions with a psychiatrist, a condition of her release. She works, communicates with her parents, alone, without family, without children,
without a past. Jean-Louis, according to recent reports, still lives in Paris. His sons have grown up. The elder became an engineer, like his father. The younger is studying to be a doctor. They have built their own lives. The past remained in that apartment on the 8th floor in Seoul, in the freezer that their father opened on that September evening in 2006.